C'était Advocacy.
Grace, how are you?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to have you. I actually met you on LinkedIn, and I don't know how we got connected. I probably just connected with you and was like, hopefully she'll say yes. And you did. And I was like, see, Grace be talking. Grace be out here on LinkedIn. And as a non-black Brit, okay, the things that you say about identity and just capitalism in Britain, I'm like, wow, the same things over here. We just don't have an accent. So I appreciate you.
It's so funny that you say we don't have an accent because we're all like, oh, we love the American accent.
Really?
It's so funny.
Really?
No, thank you so much for having me. I call myself the noisy one when on LinkedIn. Like when I meet people and they're like, I feel like I know you. I was like, I make a lot of noise on LinkedIn, so you might know me from there.
I'm like, see, Grace preaches on LinkedIn because there are no lies told. And I think it's very, jokes aside, I think it's actually very intriguing and interesting that I can relate to your content so well, and I do not live in the UK, which I also think speaks volumes about like Western societies and how capitalism was created, and yeah, all that not so fun things. But yeah, I do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the things that I'm really big on is firstly like getting really comfortable with my voice and who I am. And leaning into the discomfort of just like, not everyone's going to be happy about what I have to say, but this is my truth. And it's really important that I use the platform that I have to share it because I know it's also somebody else's truth and they might not be in the same position where they feel safe sharing that. But sometimes I'll press enter to like post it, and I'll be shaking. Ooh, what are you gonna say? What are you gonna say?
And
Because
then
there
those
are
are the
some
posts that
people.
you get like 15,000 likes because you're like, oh,
Yeah,
people get it.
yeah,
People get it. Earth is ghetto. Get
exactly.
it.
And I
Yeah.
think for me, what's also interesting as well. So one of my associates, she's also really big on LinkedIn, and she always talks about the fact that, likes isn't necessarily a reflection of the level of engagement or the number of people that have seen
Yes.
what you've said. Like, she's like, if I'm looking at the impressions and it's telling me I've got 30,000 impressions, but I've only got 100 likes, I know you're still seeing it. And maybe it made you uncomfortable, so you didn't want to react, but you saw it. Um, and for me, that's why I post so often because I'm trying to change the world one person and one organization at a time. So if one person reads my post and it impacts them in any way, whether it gets them thinking about, oh, I've done that before, I shouldn't do that again, or I feel that, I felt that, then it's definitely worth doing. So I'm
I
gonna
love
keep
it.
making noise.
Yes, yes. Which is my thing. You don't have to like what I said, but I know you read it. I know you saw
Exactly.
it.
Exactly.
So I love that. So this is a great segue into our lesson. Before we get into our lesson, I did want to ask you, where are your people from? How do we get here, Grace? How do we get here?
Right. So my people are from Nigeria. So
Okay.
I was born in Nigeria actually. I moved to the UK when I was 5. And yeah, so in the UK, it's funny, I did a post about this recently when I talked about when black people or melanated people in the UK get asked the question of where are you from? Like, where are you really from? Because there's, obviously because you're black, you can't be from here. And it's like, well, actually, I have loads of friends who were born and bred here. I just happen to be one that wasn't. So
Mm-hmm.
when I answer that question, I answer with Nigeria because that is where I'm from.
Hmm.
But I was raised in the UK, so I've been here for many a decade, hence the accent. But I definitely still see Nigeria as home, and I see the UK as home. But best believe if the world goes crazy, I will steadily take myself back to Nigeria.
Well, girl, the world's already going crazy, so you better keep your Nigerian passport online,
Crazier.
okay?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
mad.
I also think it's like I'm so glad you brought that up because I think that people just forget that the transatlantic slave trade also hit Europe. And
Yeah.
there are tons of black diaspora cousins all over Europe whose literal generational history is in Europe
Mm,
because of the transatlantic slave trade and servitude.
exactly.
And people, for whatever reason, just like to forget that. And I always want to make that
Mm.
very clear.
No, definitely. And
Yeah.
it's interesting as well because I was Googling it the other day because I was like, hold on, why don't we have, so we have obviously African Americans who were, are the descendants of slaves that were brought over to the US. We don't have like the equivalent of that in Great Britain. And
Mm.
the research that I did, which I'm like, I'm embarrassed to say I should have done it years ago. But essentially, the reason we don't have that equivalent in the UK is purely because most of the slaves that the UK had, they had them on the islands that they
In the
colonized.
Caribbean. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's the only reason we don't have that. But then those same people from the Caribbean were then brought over here as part of the Windrush generation. So that's why Windrush is such a huge thing for us in the UK because it kind of tells that whole colonization story and the slavery story for us in the UK. But yeah, like, and another post I did a while ago is the fact that, all of these comments about go home, go home. There isn't one black person that's in the West because they decided one day I'm going to leave my country and go to the West.
Yeah.
Colonization is the reason we're here,
Yeah.
right? Let's be transparent. So I think people just need to do their own research to really understand and educate themselves so that they can stop saying dumb stuff.
Or at the very least, understand that when you say dumb stuff and I respond, I don't want any feedback.
You know, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So
I'm very much in my F around and find out era where I'm like, well, you started it, so I'm just gonna disrespectfully end it. Like, we're not doing this. We're
see,
not.
I love that energy. I'm so soft. It's crazy actually because people that when people know, like people that know me or have grown up with me, they knew Grace, the spicy Grace, the one
Mm.
that didn't take any nonsense. But as I've gotten older, I was a wife, I'm a mother, um, and I've had so much stuff happen. I genuinely have softened quite significantly. So the way that I engage and the way that I post on LinkedIn, even though there is a message that is hard hitting, is always delivered in a loving way. So when I then receive like the venom from some people who just want to fight, right? Some people just wake up in the morning and they want to fight somebody. Um, Sometimes I struggle with it because I'm like, this is my page. I'm sharing my truth. If you don't like it, we can disagree without even engaging. But what I'm
Right.
not going to do, I'm not going to go back and forth with a complete stranger. We're really not doing that, especially a stranger who hasn't had my lived experience. So how are you going to try and tell me that my lived experience isn't true? It's wild.
I get it. Oh, I get it, girl, more than you know. So today, I want to talk to you about this very important lesson, I think, for everyone, regardless of color, creed, or where you come from, and what kind of seasoning or non seasoning your mama used. That not everybody's going to like you.
Yeah.
And it's not because you did anything wrong, it's just because you exist.
Yes.
So, first question for you is, can you remember the first time that you realized someone doesn't like you because you exist? And to be very specific for the folks listening, is that people cannot like you because you did something.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you
Exactly.
call somebody out their name, if you slap them on the playground, they have a right not to
Yeah.
like you. There is a reason and a reaction. But for
Exactly.
you, when was the first time that you were like, yo, this human doesn't like me because I just exist?
Do you know what? Right. I absolutely love that we're talking about this because it speaks to the power of just how much it hurts us when people don't like us just because we exist, right? So I know exactly the first time that I experienced it. I was in secondary school and there was, I think you guys might call that senior school. I don't know. I was probably
How old were
about
you?
13.
We call it middle school, but yes,
Middle school, right.
middle school.
So
Yeah.
I was in our secondary school, your middle school, and
Yeah.
there was this one girl who was actually in the year above me.
Mm-hmm.
And in school, this isn't to like big myself up, but I was quite popular in secondary school. It's because I was tall, I was confident. So there was me and my best friend at the time. We were both the same height, both these like confident, loud, funny black girls, right? Who did just took no nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this one girl in the year above who did not like me. Like no matter what, she would talk about me behind my back. She was really good friends. Like she loved my best friend, so she would like give my best friend loads of attention and like blank me even if I was there. She would like bump into me deliberately in the hall. Bearing in mind, I'm a little kid, so I'm looking up to you as the person that's older than me, and I'm thinking, when you go into secondary school, you really want to be liked by the older girls because it's like. So I'm thinking, why doesn't this girl like me? And then I come to find out that there was a guy. We had a brother, so I went to a girls' school, and we had a boys' school that was like the brother school to our school, and there was a guy in her year who liked me. And I wasn't at the age where I was interested in boys like that. I could identify a good looking guy, but I'm not looking for a boyfriend, especially not someone that's older than me at the time. And it really bothered her that this guy was nice to me. And the girl took it, like she took it deep. Because she didn't want to fight me because I was taller than her. She wasn't sure if she'd win. She didn't want to lose the cred. So she went after my little sister when my little sister joined the school. Like she took it really deep. She had her dog come and like scare my sister. My sister had to get escorted home because her and her brother were basically terrorizing her with their dog. But basically she was doing wild things to get my attention. And for love nor money, I have no idea. Like I genuinely did nothing to this girl whatsoever. But every time she would do stuff, I was like, you genuinely just don't like me because I'm here. Like, this is wild to me because I've never experienced this. I cannot imagine not liking someone just because they are who they are. Do you know what I mean? So that was the first time in my life where I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, some people just don't like you because you're you. And only now at this age am I okay with, you know what, that will happen. And I'm okay with it. But when I was younger, my heart was broken. Even though I acted like I didn't care, I was heartbroken. I was like, I didn't do anything to this girl. Why doesn't she like me? But yeah, it's crazy. And there are still people like that. They might not do the craziness that was done to me in school, but there are people that will talk about you behind your back, that will create narratives that aren't true, that will spread lies, that, just won't engage with you. And that happens in adulthood. And I think that it's really important that we understand and appreciate that it's going to happen, unfortunately. And we then need to decide, how are we going to let that impact us? Because how you feel about yourself and subsequently how you're projecting that onto your feelings about me, I'm not going to lose sleep over that. Because as long as I know that I am waking up every single morning and during that day doing and being the best person, like the best version of me, the best version of kindness, the best version of generosity and love, as long as I'm doing that each and every day, how you feel about me is now your decision. And it's also your responsibility. And it's not something that is going to keep me up at night. Life is way too short.
So when it's as you spoke about that so beautifully, I remember when I was about 13, 14 years old, my mom told me this. She said, the sooner you realize that jealousy is the root of all evil, the easier life's going to be for you.
Wow.
And I still think about that as an adult, when I'm interacting personally and professionally with people. Because you have to acknowledge that a lot of times people don't like you because they are jealous of you. They want something you have. And then also, what I'm learning now as an adult in my personal relationships is that sometimes my existence trigger things in people that have nothing to do with me. So it's
Yeah.
not about jealousy. It's not about I have something that this person wants. And instead of actively saying, help me get it, or how do you do that, they just act out, right? But it is saying that me walking into a space, how I walk, how I talk, the fact that I don't like chocolate, don't tell people that, but that is true. Triggers people and triggers their trauma. And therefore, it isn't a I hate Lexi, it's Lexi is just twerking on a nerve that I have not finalized my therapy and healed from. Which
Yeah.
is, I've had to learn the hard way, not my fault. It is not my responsibility to hold all the triggers and nerves and trauma of everyone that I interact with. But I'm happy to acknowledge and honor that sometimes how I move in the world and the authenticity, the color, all of the things can trigger people, and it's for them to figure out. But has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, and do you know what is interesting as well? Because I can't remember the exact quote, but someone said it to me a while ago that when sometimes people don't like you because when they see you, it's like a mirror being held up to them.
Ooh.
And that mirror might be showing them something in themselves that they haven't dealt with, like you said, that they maybe aren't happy about, right? One of the things that I am really big on is when I was younger, like when I say younger, I mean like in my 30s and even in my 20s, I wouldn't go to work or I wouldn't go out without makeup on my face, without high heels on. And then lockdown happened.
Yeah.
And it was 2 years of we ain't going nowhere. So I don't need to put makeup on. I don't need to wear heels. Now you can't keep me in my house for 2 years and think that after that has happened, I'm now going to come out again in heels. Because firstly, I don't remember how to walk in them. And secondly, I spent 2 years sorting my skin out and getting this complexion on point. Nobody is going to make me put makeup on unless it's a really special occasion, right? So I'm really comfortable now in who I am completely because lockdown for me was a period of transformation in which it was just me, myself, and I, right? And don't get me wrong, my daughter was there as well. But for me, it was a massive opportunity to just be with me and just to get really comfortable with me. And I think that, well, I know that that can sometimes trigger some people is the fact that how is she just walking around so confident and comfortable in her skin? And there's almost this feeling like the audacity of it, right? And I think,
And then God forbid you're a dark-skinned Black woman.
right,
The audacity that
the
you like yourself.
audacity that you like, not even
Ooh.
like, that you love yourself. That's
Ooh.
rude.
Ooh. After like the multi-billion-dollar PR campaign of
Right,
racism that said
right.
you shouldn't. It's the audacity.
1000%. And I think that that in itself is, the fact that I have the audacity to love myself and be really comfortable in who I am. Because this is the thing as well. I think sometimes people look at you and they make this decision to dislike you based on the fact that maybe you walk with your head held too high. Maybe you walk with a confidence. Maybe you just like, you just don't make the effort to like, be around people, new people. Those people that, I'm not the kind of person traditionally where if I go out and I see someone who might be a celebrity and be like, oh, I want to take a picture. There are one or two people that I will do that with. And that's people that I genuinely feel like you are making this world a better place, right? Those are the kind of people that I will take pictures with, but there aren't many of them. And I think sometimes that irks people is like, why isn't she trying to get my attention or whatever? And it's because that's just not me. That just doesn't, I'm not attracted to all of the rah, rah, rah. But also, when people look at you and they think all these things about, growing up, I used to hear this all the time. She thinks she's too nice. And I used to get upset, like, no, I don't. And actually, I'm like, now, yeah, I do. I am too nice. And what they mean by she thinks she's too nice is she thinks she's cute, or she thinks she's too good, or she thinks a lot of herself. That's what they mean by that. And now I haven't obviously heard it in a long time because I'm an adult now, and usually kids were saying that. But if anyone feels that way about me, I'm really comfortable with, actually, I do really think highly of myself, because when you look at me and you see the confidence, or you see, the way that I am, the authenticity, the head held high, you don't know the valleys that I've been in, you don't know the hurdles that I've had to overcome. And I think sometimes as humans, we can sometimes forget that life is bumpy. People have been through stuff, and everything I've been through is the reason that I run into the rest of my life. It's the reason that I'm so vocal. It's the reason that I do what I do for a living. It's the reason that I've got a savior complex. So I won't be able to just leave someone else to struggle, or watch someone else be in pain or be victimized, because I've been through stuff. And I genuinely believe that the reason that I'm still alive today is because God has work for me to do here on this earth. So I can't let other people's opinions or, potentially insecurities, I can't let that burden me, because I've got work to do. So my journey involves being divorced before I was 30, with a daughter that was less than 2 years old, feeling like I have ruined my life, suffering from postnatal depression and not even knowing I was suffering. Losing my dad, like when I was in my early 30s, having breast cancer in my mid 30s, and I'm still here. And for me, it's like, that's a lot to go through. And my best friend, who I mentioned earlier in the video, like earlier in this call, she passed away when I was 18 from a car crash, and we weren't talking when she passed away. So life's not been easy. Like, it's been bumpy as hell. But for me, each and every time there's a hurdle, I'm like, there's a reason for this. Every single one of these challenges is a period of transformation. And every time, I've stopped now because I'm 40 and it's enough, but every time I went through, like a new season in my life, like after something traumatic, I would get a new tattoo. So I've got a thing about butterflies. So every time something happened for me, I was like, this is a season of change. So we'll get another butterfly tattoo. I've got like 5 or 6. That's enough now.
Okay.
But
so at 40, we're rebuking it. We're not going to do that anymore.
it's enough.
I appreciate a boundary. Okay, I have some questions. Before I have those questions, I need to ask, so what 2 celebrities would you fawn over? Let's talk about that.
Okay. Michelle Obama, hands down.
Okay.
If I saw Auntie Michelle.
Shelly?
Listen, if I saw her. And I went to, when she came to do her book tour, I went to one of them and I was like, I love you. But it wasn't close enough to get a selfie.
Yeah.
And then the other celebrity, and I don't even know if he'd call himself a celebrity, but I don't know if you've heard of him. There's a guy in the UK called Akala, who is, look him up. He wrote an amazing book, I think, called Natives. And he is just this amazing intellectual. He's a black man. He's locked. He is, he's just, when you just meet someone and they just emanate knowledge and empathy and reason. And he's the kind of person that will tell you about yourself. You might be upset that he's just told you about yourself, but everything he said is factual, and everything he said has made you have to go into the bathroom and really speak to yourself, like, do better. I met him once at an event that my friend invited me to. I've never been so starstruck in my life. And he probably doesn't even see himself as a celebrity, but he's the kind of person where he has broken barriers. He's educated people in the UK about what it means to be black and British. He speaks vocally about it. He's all about adding value, and I love that. And there's nothing more attractive than an intellectual black man. Like, there's not. And he's just like. So when I met him, I was like, please, can I get a picture? And it's funny because at the event, it was like a footballers award show. So there was loads of footballers there.
Yeah.
And there was like this other famous footballer there. I think it was like Rio Ferdinand was there, who used to play for Man U, I think. He was there. But when I saw Carla, I was like, Rio who?
Girl, Rio's fine. Rio's fine. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
I'm not a fan like that of
yeah,
footballers.
yeah.
But when I saw Carla, forget the footballers, I was like, what?
I love it.
What?
I love it.
So yeah, so I'm really big on just people that, I don't know, I feel like people that are, to me, are superheroes, right? Michelle Obama, to me, is a superhero. Like, that woman showed us what it is to carry the weight on the world on your shoulders and do it in such a graceful way. Yeah, she's amazing. And yeah, Akala for me. But people always say to me, like, who's your celebrity crush? And I'm like, I don't know that I have them, but if I had to pick one, it'd probably be Akala. And the thing is, like, he lives in the UK. And if he ever sees this, like, don't worry, I'm not going to come and stalk you.
Akala, this is a safe and healthy love.
You
Don't
know?
call the police. Yes.
Right? But I think you're amazing. I think you're amazing.
I think you would appreciate that. I do. I have a theory, and I love Uncle Barack. So this is nothing against him, but my
Yeah.
theory is that Michelle was the actual president for 8 years. That's my theory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was amazing.
Because what that woman had to go through, what she had to do. I'm also loving that now that she's not in office, we can see all the layers of Michelle.
Yeah.
Remember, Michelle's from the South Side of Chicago. Okay. And I tell people that I'm like, do not let this suit play you. Okay. Michelle's from the South Side of Chicago.
Exactly.
And there is a swag and a twerk and a rhythm and also an F around and find out
Yeah.
about Black people from the South Side of Chicago. And so I remember when she came out and was like, when they go low, we go high. And then this summer, years later, she was like, bump that. Bump that. And so I'm loving this. I don't want to say more authentic, but I'm loving this like liberated Michelle.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's the
Out of White
freedom.
House. Yeah.
Yes.
Of Michelle's like, you know
Yeah.
what had happened was. And I'm like, yes, Auntie Michelle. Yes. I love it. I love it.
But that's
So
the thing as well. I think that's why I admire her so much, because she really showed me personally as a Black woman what it means to remain authentic whilst also being conscious of your environment, right? And adapting in a way that you need to still have the necessary impact
yes.
without losing who you are. And to me,
Exactly.
that is just amazing.
Yeah. Shout out to Auntie Michelle. Shout out to
You
Auntie
know?
Michelle. So you brought up this idea that people get upset when we are not humble. And I want to talk about that more because it's interesting how when you're a child, especially as a little girl, like we have to be very honest, especially as a little girl, and especially as a non-white little girl. And the number of times that people try to check you and tell you that you think you're too much,
Yeah.
right? It's weird. Growing up, it was like, well, you think you're too much, but you are too loud, but you are too Black, but you're not Black enough. But whatever it is, you think you have to humble yourself. And then we grow up and you start working because, you know, bills got to be paid, sis. Bills
Right.
need to be paid. And the one thing that I learned in my 20s, when I started adulting, was I was like, yo, all this humble stuff is not going to get me paid.
Right?
So I spent my whole
Listen,
life.
what did they say? The good girl does not get the corner office.
No. And so I'm always baffled by that I'm like, growing up, I, along with billions of other little girls, was told to stay humble. And so I worked really hard to do that, really hard not to be seen, really hard to be small in the room. I don't want to be too much. And then I become an adult and I'm like, wait a minute. In order for me to make a paycheck, I have to be all that in a bag of chips. I have to damn near clown myself. Like, because y'all not going to give me anything if I stay humble. Has that ever happened to you? How did that transformation
Listen,
come for you?
I talk about that a lot. So I'm writing a book at the moment about the impact that culture has on the way that we show up in work and in education. Growing up in a Nigerian household, we are taught that as the women, it's our job to be subservient. It's our job to take care of the men. If there's cooking and cleaning that needs to be done, it's us that does it. But also being an immigrant in this country, my parents were always worried about being deported, right? And always worried about the fact that they were very conscious that they were black, and that, you know, black people aren't the same as white people, right? At least that's how we're treated. So my mum always used to tell me, do not make too much noise, keep quiet, you know, try not to be seen, only speak when you're spoken to, things like that. Like, we were genuinely conditioned to behave in that way. So going into the world of work for me was a stark realization that this isn't working. So what that did, and when I went into, in fact, I got in trouble in primary school because I wouldn't look at my teacher in her eyes. So in my culture, you're not allowed to look at adults in their eyes when they're talking to you. It's seen as disrespectful. So if you're spoken to, you're meant to look at the floor. So every time my teacher would speak to me, I would look at the floor, and she'd say, look at me. And I wouldn't, because I was scared. Like, this is a trick. I'm going to look at you and you're going to tell my mom and I'm going to get beaten, right? So I would get in a lot of trouble for that until my mum found out about it, and she had to explain to the teacher what our culture taught us. But then when I got into the world of work, I also started to see that people weren't looking at me as leadership material, because in meetings I was quiet. Unless someone asked me a question, I wasn't contributing anything. Unless I was spoken to, I wasn't saying anything. Like, I did everything to really dim myself down, so that, because my blackness is very potently obvious, and I know that for some people that's an issue. So I did everything that I could to be palatable in the workplace, and to me that meant not being too noticeable, not being too loud, etc. But then what I started to see in meetings, that it was, you know, the loud white boys in the meetings that were basically like speaking up and like suggesting all these things, sometimes really wild things that were off topic, that weren't even that good, but they were the ones that were being recognized and promoted and all of this. And I started to see that actually there's a massive culture clash here, because as a black person, I'm not taught to do any of what you're doing. But if I did even an ounce of what you're doing, I would be, you know, like, things would look different for me. So
You wouldn't have the same outcome.
I wouldn't have the same outcome. But then when I think about it, though, there's two ways to look at it, right? So one of them is when they're suggesting ideas, or just talking for the sake of talking sometimes, or you know, like maybe even repeating an idea that somebody else has already said, but that person wasn't heard. They are progressing into leadership because they're seen as confident, they're seen as leadership material. So if I did some of that, I'd still need to perform above and beyond, right? I still need to make sure I perform above and beyond. But I also now need to act a little bit like this white man, because he's being heard and he's being promoted. And that seems to be what this country requires. Like, to them, that's what leadership looks like. Leadership is confident, it's loud, it's, you know, it sometimes speaks over other people, it has its own opinions, etc. And so there's definitely like a bit of a balancing act for black people in the UK and probably across the world when they're working in multicultural teams, is appreciating that actually I need to uncondition myself of some of the things that I was taught and some of the things that I've experienced, because they won't serve me in the world of work, in the corporate world. If I'm trying to climb the ladder, some of the traumas, etc., I'm going to need to heal those, or I'm going to need to park them outside of the workplace, which isn't to say deny your experiences, but if one of your traumas is around, you know, not being allowed to use your voice in your home culturally, for example, that is going to need to be something that you take a deep hold of and you fight through in the world of work, because we aren't given opportunities as black people. We have to go out and take them. And in order for us to take them, it does require doing sometimes double, triple times the work, because not only are we excelling in, you know, our performance at work, but we also have to code switch, like in a way that is exhausting. We've got to code switch. We've got to, you know, kind of observe
the dominant culture that we live with to see actually what's working in your space and what's caused you to advance and learn from them. So we're unlearning, we're learning, we're performing. We've got to do so many things. We're spinning so many plates. But no, I can definitely identify with that experience because if I'm honest, I don't know many Black people that can't. Like, there is a lot of stuff that comes with being Black. And I was at an event yesterday and they were talking about the fact that every child experiences racism, right?
Of course.
Irrespective of their color, though.
Yeah.
Because you could be an ally, you could be a witness, you could be a perpetrator, and you could be a victim.
Yeah.
Every single one of us experiences racism, but it does different things to each of us. So the experience of the victim is very, very different to the experience of a perpetrator or a witness, for example. And I think that it's really important that we're mindful of the fact that actually our experiences as Black people are very different to many of the leaders who we work with in organizations, and they won't necessarily understand or appreciate or sometimes care about that. But it's really important that we as individuals do what we can to overcome that, whether it be, performing a little bit. So, going outside of the box and going outside of your comfort zone in terms of how you usually show up. Because I'm an ambivert by nature, which means that when I'm comfortable, I can be as extroverted as needed. I perform because I know that I need to perform in that space. But as soon as I can get out, I will, because I then need to fill my cup again and I become my introverted self. I have my quiet time, I do whatever. But the reason I'm an ambivert is because of the experiences I've had over life and that understanding that I'm going to need to be a little bit different in some spaces to be heard. One of the things I used to really struggle with is when I did start to try and use my voice in meetings, I would go to say something and then someone would speak over me and cut me off and just carry on talking without any regard for the fact that they heard me talking. And then I couldn't interject because I never wanted to be seen as the angry Black woman. So I would just sit there quietly, which meant my voice was swallowed up. I didn't have the opportunity to speak. There weren't people in the room that said, actually, Grace was speaking, let her finish. And that's a lot of the work that I do now with organizations, is understanding that happens. And particularly when it happens to Black women, there are two things they're thinking. They're thinking, one is, I really want to say what I've got to say. But two, if I say it, am I going to be seen as the angry Black woman? And that thought can sometimes mean that we don't speak. And then you assume that because we're not speaking, we're not leadership material. But then the other side of that is actually we decide, no, you're going to hear me today. And we take that spot back and we say what we've got to say. And then someone calls you aggressive or they call you angry. And they say you're not leadership material because you're aggressive and you're angry. And actually all I've done is exactly what my colleague just did. But because I'm a Black woman, the connotations attached to that are completely different. It's a lot.
As you were talking, I started to think about, you made this comment about how we all interpret this stuff differently, and therefore we all perform differently in order to be free, or at least at very minimum have peace. And I never really thought about that, because that's really true. And so as you were talking, I was just really thinking about how have I navigated these corporate spaces based on my experience. And I think one of my biggest traumas, and again, I'm figuring this out in real time from therapist Grace, is that I always felt as though my manager never had my back. And I always tell people, I need to be managed by someone who is strong enough. I can't be managed by somebody who allows me to be put in the wolves and doesn't say anything. And that's very interesting, because when I think about my career and the steps that I've made, I'm actively always looking for managers who have my back. So when people cut me off in meetings, I just go snitch. When people take credit for my work, I go snitch, right? I always have to have this alignment with the person who writes my check, which for the record is a lot of privilege and really hard to do. And any person in the corporate world, but especially as a Black woman, to find direct people that have the power to say, you will not treat her like that
Yeah.
or else. And I think I'm doing that because I don't want to be that 20 something again in the room where no one had my back. It's a very vulnerable and scary and violent place to be.
Definitely. And it's funny as well, because hearing you say that has me thinking back to when I used to manage teams. And one of the things I used to say regularly in my team meetings is, I will have your back to the end of the earth, right? I will go to war for you, but don't ever make me look silly. So if I go to war for you and then someone comes back with receipts to say, no, actually, you were at fault, that negates what I'm trying to do for you, right? So, but I always wanted to be, and I always endeavored to be that manager that I was about to say my children, that my team knew that if anything happened to them, if anyone wronged them, if anyone stole from them, if anyone like took credit for their work, or, you know, anything happened at work, that I would be a manager that they could trust would have their back. And I genuinely I'm now realizing that the reason I did that was because I was trying to be the manager that I wanted. I wanted someone that I knew would speak up for me, that would see when I was being mistreated and say, no, we're not having that. Because that is something that we sometimes lack in the workplace, is that advocacy and that true active allyship from people who understand that actually they are in a position of power, not necessarily just because of their titles, sometimes also because of their race and where the myth that is race placed them in the hierarchy, but they use that power effectively, right? And I'm also really big on teach people how to treat you.
Ooh.
Right? So if I'm role modeling to my team, there weren't any black women in my team. My team was the team I'm thinking of anyway were mainly Asian men and white men or women. So I was the only black person in my team, and I was hopefully developing in them a sense of allyship that showed them what it meant to speak up when you're in a position of power for other people that maybe don't have the same level of power as you, and the impact that can have on people. Because my team knew, if anything happened, just tell Grace. Grace will deal with it. And I did.
That's like a black mama thing, right?
100%.
Because as you say that, I'm thinking about my own mom. And growing up, I was like, say something, Grace. I'm calling my mama, right? And I think we bring that to the workplace where we're like, oh, not this one.
Yeah, but you know what? It's interesting because my mom wasn't like that.
Really?
So my
mother was a bulldog. People knew at school, like, don't talk to her because Darcel will roll up. I'm like, yup.
That's what I'm like, right? But when I was growing up, my mom, because my mom was working 3 jobs, she was an immigrant to the UK, she was still trying to work out what this country was about. She was trying to put food on the table for her kids. And she was also like, my mom was scared every day, like scared that her kids weren't going to get food, scared that she could lose her job, that we wouldn't have a home, scared that we could get deported, scared all the time, right? So anytime I brought something to my mom would basically tell me to go and sort it out myself. I remember one time someone was teasing me at school because when I first moved to the UK, for the first couple of years, my mum used to do this. Anyone that's Nigerian here will probably know this, but we have this hairstyle where you basically get the hair and you wrap it with string. Yeah. So when you're finished with it, it looks like these worms sticking out of your head. And now people have made them creative and beautiful. But my mum used to put that in our hair, and we just have these things sticking out of our heads. And these people at school, these kids at school used to say, oh, she's got worms in her hair. And they used to really tease me. And I'd go home crying. I'd tell my mum about it. And she'd be like, if you come home one more time and tell me someone said this to you and you didn't finish it, you see. So my mum very much instilled in me, and it's things that I'm still trying to unlearn, is this need to have my own back and to deal with things by myself. So I've spent a lot of time unlearning that. So I've spent a lot of time unlearning that need to do everything and fix everything by myself because I didn't have that growing up. So for me, as a mum now, my daughter is She's very careful what she tells me because she knows Mum's going to get on the phone to somebody. Mum's going to turn up at the school.
Mama Grace said, you looked at my daughter how? Okay.
Listen, she knows
Okay.
I
Yeah.
do not play. So I feel like I was trying to be the person that I didn't have in my life.
Yeah.
As a manager, as a mum, I didn't have anyone that rode for me. I didn't have anyone that said, I've got you. I didn't have anyone that if anyone troubled me, they'd deal with them. Like that wasn't my life. So I very much developed into this woman who had a savior complex that I wanted to save everybody because there was nobody to save me. So yeah, it's interesting.
Love it. So reintroduce yourselves to us. Who are you?
I am a woman that is just trying to do the best she can with the time that she has. I'm a mum, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, and I am a woman living life on purpose.
A woman living life on purpose, which is a revolutionary and militant act
Right?
in the world that we live in. So I thank you for that, sis. I thank you.
Thank you.